through Tuesday's papers with the Express, page 2 of the Express. Ridiculous is its headline. Russia says MI5 agent with license to kill poisoned ex-spy.
Yeah, and they like to claim that our lot have been watching too many James Bond movies, and it sounds like it's the other way round. So it's a really desperate attempt by Russia to try to deflect attention from their own culpability over the poisoning of Sergei Skripal and his daughter by suggesting that actually it might have been our own intelligence services that poisoned these two victims. Quite what the rationale for that is, I'm not sure, but some suggestion that it's a distraction from Brexit. That went well, didn't it? I mean, actually, all that happened is our allies rallied round us, and actually it probably emphasised that Brexit is not quite such a terrifying prospect as many people fear.
And also a denial that they have any stocks of Novichok anymore, that they've all been destroyed. Sonia?
Yeah, well, yes. I mean, I don't think their denials come as a surprise, because I think we're sort of past the point of Moscow holding their hands up and saying we did this. So I think their response is just quite predictable and in line with the line they've taken to date, really. But I mean, I agree with Isabel. It's just a bit of a
laughable, really.
It's a bit of a stretch, really. And that's a very, very polite way of putting it.
And I think President Putin today saying that well, if we'd done it, they would be dead. Now, and of course, Yulia Skripal is making a recovery of sorts.
What's his point, being that he's so brilliant at poisoning people that he would just make sure that there wasn't any doubt in the matter? Are we supposed to be impressed by that?
But continuing to request access to Yulia Skripal.
Yeah, there's an interesting dilemma, isn't it? I mean, I don't know what the diplomatic rules are around that, and you know, we don't yet know how she feels about having access to Russian emissaries coming to the hospital. It's strange.
If I was her, I think I'd feel quite worried about it.
Right, they might be there to finish off the job.
Yeah, who we think was responsible, but yeah.
Yeah, we've had much criticism of Moscow, and yet Moscow is saying that Britain, in fact, has broken the Cold War rules in its response to this.
Well, I mean, this is just ludicrous coming from Russia, which is displaying aggressive tactics across many regions, particularly in the Baltic states. In fact, the Times today had an excellent expose of Russia's activities in the Ukraine and the kind of very aggressive operations that they're conducting there. And what's so insidious about it is a lot of what they're doing is just sub-threshold. They're not quite sure who it is and what it is and exactly what's going on. It's campaigns of misinformation, computer hacking, all sorts of illegal activities, all calculated to lay the ground for potentially incursions on territory.
Okay, let's move on to talk about Brexit. The issue of a passport.
Yes.
And the colour of a passport has been controversial, the British blue passport, and the De La Rue in court to fight for that contract.
Yes, so the contract to make our new blue passports was recently awarded not to the British firm that bid, but to the company Gemalto, which I'm not actually sure, but they're not British.
They're French-Dutch, I think.
French-Dutch, yes, that's it. Thanks for helping me out there. So De La Rue, despite having quite a French-sounding name, was a British company that went for it. It's a bit of a confusing story. They are now, as expected, I think, going to launch a fight in the court system to get the contract because they say it was unfairly awarded to Gemalto. I think it's very difficult to sort of know the ins and outs of this, but the idea that we're leaving Europe and therefore every single government contract should go to a British firm is a bit of a stretch, I
don't think that.
No, exactly.
There's slightly more nuanced, possibly, this decision than has appeared. I mean, I think there are those who've looked into De La Rue and its finances, and there are some question marks over particularly its pension fund and some of its liabilities, and it may be that the government has actually rather mishandled the communication of the reason that they took the decisions that they did on this contract, and possibly De La Rue was banking on the fact that it would get the contract just on a kind of emotional basis.
But its bid was far higher than the...
Well, I suspect that they may well have overbid on the basis that they thought that they would have preferential treatment of some sort.
So their complaint is that in France they wouldn't have been able to bid
I mean,
for a contract.
bottom line, this has not been well handled by the government, has it?
But I think it's tricky for the government because it's government procurement. They've got to be very careful what they say legally about the process, because anything that they say is going to end up in court, with De La Rue saying that shows that it was an unfair decision. So I think it is tricky. This does give me a chance, though, to talk about one of my favourite April Fools over the weekend, which is that one of the EU institutions, I can't actually remember which one it was, but tweeted out over the weekend a very good trolling of Britain, I think, which was that they tweeted out that all European passports are now going to turn blue.
So we'll all be the same. We're going to end on a story in the Times, front page of the Times, in fact. Older men like older women, as well as younger ones.
I didn't choose this story, so I'm totally going to you to lead off on that one.
So it's now official. For years we've thought that, older men may like younger women, but actually what this new study has found is that actually what happens when men age, the upper bound of what they consider an acceptable age range of women to fancy goes up, whereas the lower bound stays the same.
So they just broaden their horizons.
We have this profound finding in this front page story of the Times. It says, this means that the older he is, the wider the range, until by the time a man reaches 50, he would think almost any woman under retirement age to be worthy of pursuit.
Happily, it adds that the women are not quite so receptive to
yes, that there is
the
a note,
charms.
there is a corollary to this result called self-delusion. So just because a 60-year-old man thinks that a 20-year-old woman might be fair game, it does not mean that his feelings will necessarily be reciprocated.
Surprise, surprise.
Yes.
Yes, indeed. Women, in many cases, are more picky with respect to sexual partners. And yes, it goes on. The results showed men were less youth-obsessed than had been thought, though. Might help relax the belief that men are mainly interested in young women. As you say, it sounds like they're interested in all women, according to this. Sonia and Isabel, thanks very much indeed. Now let's take a look at the weather.